Look, everyone hates bullies. There's 1,000,001 movies about bullies just being huge jerkbags and then finally getting what they deserve. And those movies are awesome. Unless you're a bully yourself, in which case maybe you have a little bit invested in bully stock, in which case maybe you should click off this video. But for the rest of the normal people who are still here, instead of baseball bullies this time, let's talk about some football bullies who finally got what they deserved. Let's start with a man named Sal Alosi, a former strength and conditioning coach for the Jets. Now, for context, my boss is a Jets fan, which means his judgment isn't very good, but wait till you see how bad this guy's judgment was. This one is especially crazy because there's some pretty insane twists in here, but why don't we just start with the moment that kicked all this off. Back when he was coaching for the Jets in a game against the Dolphins in 2010, during this play, Alosi saw an opportunity to be a scumbag and he took it. As Nolan Carroll was running along the out of bounds line, Alosi, again, the strength and conditioning coach for the Jets, stuck his knee out intentionally to trip him. Mid-play, need I remind you? Like, what was going through his thick skull when he decided to enact that harebrained scheme? There ain't no two ways about it. He stuck that knee out intentionally, not even trying to hide it as he ran by. Like, that's insane. That's crazy. Oh, and by the way, we have the answer to what was going through his brain. The answer is nothing. His explanation is that he wasn't thinking at the time, and he's very sorry about it. The fact you can do that and still keep your job is insane, and somehow this story gets even crazier. It's been reported that the same year the tripping incident happened, he got into a literal, quote, fist fight with Jets cornerback Darrelle Revis. You know, one of the best cornerbacks ever, Darrelle Revis. Revis Island at its peak, mind you. Yeah, the Jets' strength and conditioning coach exchanged blows with him while being his coach. You can't make this stuff up. He also had a petty beef with a chiropractor in 2010 at one point because why not? He, quote, was verbally abused, I think that's supposed to say abusive, but that's what the quote says, and humiliated her, even trying to prohibit her from treating players because he was ticked off over petty issues involving towels and water. Say what you want about chiropractors, I personally think they're kind of a sham, but it does just kind of overall sound like this guy is a dick. And then after all this, he finally resigned from the Jets. But it's what he did at his next job that killed his public image forever. After getting a job at UCLA as the strength and conditioning coach, he got into, who would have guessed, another altercation, this time with the father of one of the players who accused him of mistreating his son, which by this point I'd probably believe it. As we've seen from his past behavior, these situations involving Alosi can get physical, of course, which is what happened here, ending with the father swinging a kettlebell at him over the situation. But the craziest part about this situation is that the father that got into it with Alosi was mad because he was, quote, riding Justin too hard. Justin, as in Justin Combs, aka the son of Diddy Combs. Yes, the strength and conditioning coach for UCLA got into a physical fight with Diddy. Who knows, maybe Alosi was just ahead of the curve and wanted to start a fight with him, but either way, what a story.
Hello, this is FICO's boss, who has poor judgment because I root for a green football team in New Jersey, invading the video real quick just to say, we have holiday merch. Go check it out. Alright, bye.
Now, Albert Connell has an interesting story here. Drafted in the 4th round by the Redskins in 1997, he played 4 years for them, with his best season being 1999, where he had 62 receptions for 1,132 yards and 7 touchdowns. As a free agent, he signed to the Saints in 2001 for $14 million, and did terrible, only racking up 12 catches for 191 yards in his first 11 appearances. Needless to say, he was doing pretty bad. So when he saw $863 in the pants pocket of his teammate Duke McAllister, he knew he didn't have long, so he took his opportunity, I guess. How down bad do you have to be after just signing a $14 million deal to steal $863 from your teammate when they're not looking? Here's the thing though, this wasn't a one-off thing, and I I guess he must have just had a personal vendetta against McAllister because he double dipped. Just 4 days after the initial theft, he stole another $3,500 from McAllister's truck. After these crimes were reported, there was a warrant put out for his arrest, and he was eventually released on a $10,000 bond. But guys, don't worry, he didn't actually steal the money. See, I know it looks like he stole the money because he went into the pocket of his jeans and broke into his truck and physically took a wad of cash, but like, calm down, dude, because as he claims, it was just a prank. He was gonna film it for a YouTube video that he was gonna post like literally next week, so calm down. Back in 2001. This whole situation mixed with the fact that in his entire career, Connell totaled 150 catches for 2,674 yards and 16 touchdowns. Yeah, he never played in the NFL again. Good riddance. Now this next one gets a little bit dark. A hazing incident took place with the New Orleans Saints in 1998. Wow, 2 straight Saints ones in a row and just a couple years apart is kind of wild, but the gist of this is that a bunch of rookies had just been signed to the Saints and were grabbed, had pillowcases forcibly placed over their heads, and were forced to run a quote-unquote gauntlet run by some of the veteran players. Now think about it this way. You're randomly grabbed, ripped from wherever you are, and pillowcases are placed over your head and you're being dragged against your will someplace you have no idea about. Obviously, you're gonna fight and struggle. This is what happened with the most notable player involved, Jeff Danish, because during the struggle, his arm went through a window while he was being dragged, which resulted in a gash that required 13 stitches. And this was before the gauntlet even started. Players were apparently elbowed, kicked, tortured, and at one point hit with a bag full of coins. Multiple players were injured from this incident, some of which never played again, with another player named Cam Cleland being left with bruises, severe headaches, and blurred vision, which sounds an awful lot like a concussion, Jesus Christ, and another player being left with a bloody nose. Jeff Danish eventually filed a lawsuit against the Saints for $650,000, naming 6 players and an assistant coach in the suit as defendants. They eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. And the coach of the Saints at the time, Mike Ditka, that sounds a little too close to something else, was quoted saying, "It's not a big deal." Also saying, if this is the avenue that he pursued, then fine. Let the courts figure out what it is. He took his chances. We'll take our chances. Like, my God, what a douche. Say what you want about like dude bro culture, but I think it's cringe, and situations like this are exactly why. But the consequences here were swift and noticeable. Most of the perpetrators in the hazing scandal never played again. The Saints went 9-23 across their next 2 seasons, and Coach Mike, it's not a big deal Ditka, was fired after 1999, with his reputation in the toilet for trading an entire year's worth of Saints draft picks for one player, and got clowned so hard for this that they memed him as marrying that one player. What are my thoughts on Ditka losing his job? It's not a big deal. Urban Meyer is known as one of the greatest coaches in college football history, but didn't get a chance in the NFL until 2021 when the Jacksonville Jaguars hired him. His record through 13 NFL games, 2 wins, 11 losses. Ouch. He was an absolute nightmare for the Jags. The team was bad. He was fined $100,000 by the NFL before even coaching a game for violating practice rules. Was caught on video hanging out with a woman who was not his wife in his own restaurant during his team's bye week. Called all of his assistant coaches losers, whilst in the same breath calling himself a winner. Pissed off respected and mild-mannered veteran receiver Marvin Jones so much with how aggressively and publicly he criticized the team's receivers, and still maintained his job. Until Josh Lambo was the Jaguars' kicker that season. He played for Jacksonville since 2017, 4 whole years before Urban became the coach. After 3 weeks in 2021, he was released from the team. A couple of months later, he publicly told a story about an exchange he had with Urban before the team's prior postseason game. During warm-ups, Urban approached Josh Lambo and literally kicked him in the leg just because. Josh was obviously shocked. He stood his ground and said, "Don't ever kick me again." Urban responded with, and I kid you not, "I'm the head ball coach. I'll kick you whenever the fuck I want." Yes, the head coach of an NFL team is literally assaulting his own players just because in his mind, he can. Naturally, because this is insane, he was fired the day after the story came out. He has not coached at any level of football since. Bit of a quickie. Hothead Raymond Clayborn once, after a win Yes, after a win, because he himself was having a bad week, threatened and antagonized media by intentionally bumping and snapping at them, saying if anyone came near him in the locker room, he would bury them. On his way back to his locker from the trainer's room, a TV reporter was pushed into the area, bumping into another player, who then bumped into Clayborn. This caused Clayborn to go off into a fit of rage. He continued to antagonize the media, to which reporter Will McDonough said, "Hey, there's no need to do that." Clayborn responded by grabbing reporter McDonough and shoving his fingers in his face, pointing towards his eyes as if to poke him. Yes, apparently this is actually a thing people used to do, and not just in 90s Bullies movies. In response, McDonough threw a right hook and rocked his ass before the fight was broken up. And the best part is Clayborn was the one who was later fined $2,000 for it. And this was in the 80s, so in today's money, that's about $8,000. Look, media can be annoying, I get it, but as long as they're not TMZ or paparazzi, they're just doing their job, bro. Don't be a douche. Now, the Clint Longley situation back in the 70s is a lot different. During a practice for the Dallas Cowboys, Roger Staubach and Clint Longley got into it. After some verbal exchanges, they went behind a nearby baseball dugout where they were practicing and started getting physical, as in like, they started fighting. Don't make it weird. The Cowboys' assistant coach said he saw them yelling at each other and then saw them start leaving the field towards the water station. He thought they were just going to get a drink, but then he saw them go behind the dugout and start going at it, at which point he ran over to break it up, where Rogers was on top of Staubach. And after the fight, both players said it's just kind of a thing that happens. Staubach claims it was, quote, not a big deal. It was just the frustration of 5 weeks of training camp. And Longley saying it's a new form of conditioning. We do it after running sprints and before lifting weights. We get so little contact. We decided to roll over and push each other. We probably could fight for hours and not hurt each other. Overall, it just seemed like boys being boys at that point, yeehaw, or some. However, it turns out it was much more than just tensions running high. They ended up having a second fight the same week. And this one was a lot less stress relieving and more trying to hurt each other. Longley was quoted saying, "I hate the guy, so make what you want of that." But the details of the fight go, Longley said Staubach shoved a chair at him with his shoulder pads on and initiated the fight, so he retaliated by hitting him in the face. Whereas Staubach's version, he says that Longley hit him when he wasn't looking, which made him turn his head and hit the scale, quote unquote, and caused a cut over his left eye that required stitches. Longley then challenged Staubach to a full-on boxing match, to which he refused, saying it wouldn't be worth his time. Apparently, this all stems from Staubach telling Longley basically, "Hey bro, we're supposed to run our 2 laps at the beginning of practice, so like, you should do that and set a good example as a quarterback." After this incident, he was traded from the team the next year to the Chargers without much of a statement about it. I think it's pretty obvious why they traded him. The fact that he continued to try to act like he was in the right the whole time and never actually apologizing for a second incident where it was obvious that it wasn't just a release of stress. And after the 1976 season, he never played in the NFL again. Goodbye, you goober. And now, one final funny one for you. This one falls more under trash talkers getting their comeuppance, but it is genuinely too funny not to end on. Freddie Mitchell was a former first-round pick receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles, who played for their 2004 Super Bowl team.
EA Sports, it's in the game.
He was asked before their Super Bowl against the New England Patriots about members of the Patriots secondary, to which he claimed he didn't know any of their names, just their numbers, before intentionally getting all of their numbers wrong. Surely this means he had to be ready to just dominate the Pats secondary, right? Because they were just that insignificant to him. Well, 1 catch, 11 yards, Eagles lose. After the game, Emperor Palpatine said to the media in regards to Mitchell, quote, "He's terrible and you can print that. I was happy when he was in the game." Mitchell responded by saying the Super Bowl champion Patriots who just shut him down into the aether during the game reminded him of a bunch of little girls. Good one. He held out of the Eagles training camp the next year. Coach Andy Reid said he didn't even want Mitchell there. They released him shortly after his holdout commenced, and he never played in the NFL again. Oh, and then he later pled guilty to tax fraud. But anyways, as always, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one. Have a lovely day, gamers. Peace.